Hi, everyone. This is Aaron Myers from Ishmael Interactive, and welcome to the CX Pod. Today, I am joined with Derek Alton from Apolitical and soon to be from Civic Punks. Derek, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello. So I'm Derek Alton. I am a lifetime obsessor of how do we make government work better. I've been dancing around this from a bunch of different perspectives, studying it. Been working in academia, researching innovation in government, working in the government of Canada for 6.5 years, mainly around digital transformation, and then getting more and more pulled into the global space. And then for the last 3.5 years, working with Apolitical, which is a global social learning community of public servants all over the world, connecting public servants with leading ideas and practices. And yeah, getting ready next year to jump into this crazy odyssey where I'm going to be traveling the world, really exploring the future of government and sharing it in the format of videos and podcasts under the banner of Civic Punks, which is a term I really quite like and I think speaks to this idea of innovation in government and there's a scrappiness to it, there's a rebelness to it, but it's really centered on making communities and societies better. So that's me.
So, Derek, I want to focus mostly on sort of your overall civil service philosophy and Civic Punks, but I would be remiss if I just completely skipped Apolitical because they do such great work. In a nutshell, a good place to learn, a good place to pick up templates.
Yeah, I mean, Apolitical has been around. We're actually celebrating our 10-year birthday next week. It's Apolitical Day. It's a big event based in London. And so Apolitical's been around for the last 10 years, really trying to figure out how do we make government better? How do we make government smarter? And really the philosophy is like, can we do this by connecting public servants around the world to leading ideas and practices? We do that through online courses, lots of free events that people can join, and where they get to hear from leading thinkers and practitioners around the world. A lot of the work that I've been doing with Apolitical is around communities. We have these forums that allow people to connect to their peers around common themes. So we've got a community focused around AI in government. It's kind of a big deal these days. I think we're over 12,000 people in that community now sharing ideas and practices from around the world. And yeah, also lots of articles, public servants writing for each other and sharing ideas, practices, cases, lessons, all with this goal of making government better and smarter. So yeah, definitely check it out. Yeah, it's a great place.
I'll highly recommend it myself, especially the communities. I believe there's over 40 communities there now.
Yep.
And it's just from my own personal experience. I am by trade a data guy and a project manager. And whenever anybody asks me, how do you get good in that? I say, go find somebody who is good and follow them. Don't leave them alone.
Well, and
There's a
what I
lot of
say,
people who really know their stuff in those communities.
well, I think what really actually brought me to apolitical in the first place was sort of this problem I ran into where I was starting a new job in the government of Canada, working on digital identity and digital credentials. And I had been playing in the digital transformation space for a few years at that point, but the whole digital ID, digital credential space was fairly new to me. So I just want to know, like, who else is working on this? And I had no idea where to go. And I'm more networked and plugged in than a lot of people, and I didn't know where to go. So I imagine that a lot of public servants are wrestling with this. And the flip side of that is no matter what you're doing in the government, chances are there's someone doing that exact same job in basically every government all over the world. And so this idea of like, if we just create space to connect these people to each other who are trying to do the same thing, what can we learn from each other? And the thing I love about government is that for the most part, and obviously there are exceptions to this, but for the most part, you're not in competition with each other. You're kind of in this sort of group together where you're all trying to make your communities and your societies better. So there's a real openness I find when talking to public servants to share best practices and learn from each other. And what really was missing was the space that allowed public servants to find each other and share these best practices. And that's what Apolitical's doing. And I think it's wonderful. And that's why I've been so happy to be part of it for the last 3.5 years.
But with your new effort, Civic Punks, you're moving more towards sort of the bleeding edge of that and finding the new issues. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things that I'm hoping to do with Civic Punks. One is just like curiosity. I'm really like we are going through this period of massive transformation right now. Um, and we're entering into this new world, and we don't really know what government needs to be in this new world. But there are people all over the world who are trying to figure this out. And I just want to I want to find them and I want to learn from them. So part of it's just like my own personal curiosity. But the other part of it is I watch way too much YouTube, as I think a lot of us do. And I am shocked that there is just no good content around public sector innovation, around making government better. I mean, there's tons on politics, but there's also tons on like, like how to uh, make a bridge or how to play different games or how to like any curiosity you might have, no matter how obscure, there's a YouTuber out there making videos, maybe a couple with thousands and thousands of followers. And yet, this thing that employs more people than anything else in the world, and I would argue is more important because the health of your government will decide the health of your society. Nobody's making content about this, and I think that's a huge omission. So my goal is to at least start making some video content, some fun, playful video content. It's not gonna be anything fancy. It'll be very lo-fi. It's just me with my smartphone, wandering the globe, making videos. But the hope is to inspire people about how exciting and interesting public service can be, and how important it is to really making a better world and a better community for all of us.
So let's roll back to sort of that how fun, exciting, and important it can be. And what I am getting at is I'll share you a story. When I got out of my bachelor's degree, University of Florida, go Gators, uh, I was trying to pick my next career, and I had two major leads. One was assistant manager of a Sherwin-Williams paint store, and the other one was join the Peace Corps. One pays money, the other one's the Peace Corps. So I chose Peace Corps, and my dad asked me why, and I said honestly, I just wanted to do something cool. You
Mm.
can't go to a bar and say I manage paint as sort of a lead in to meeting people. It doesn't fly, it doesn't work. Um, and I feel like a lot of civil service is kind of that way. It's not your lead in, it's not your exciting, it doesn't give people the essence of cool. So what I'm going off of civic punk. What makes civil service punk to you?
Um, I think, I mean, first off, service. It's this idea that you're helping. It's a job that you do not for yourself. It's a job that you do for others to make the world better, to make your community better, to help those. Oftentimes, the role of government in society is to support the weak and the downtrodden, which I think is a hugely admirable and important role. It's sort of the safety net. The government is there to, help people who need help. And I think that's an important role. And the flip side of that is government is also there to just create the conditions that allow us all to succeed and thrive. And this idea of helping people, that service piece, I think is really important. The civic piece for me is really about this idea of like thinking critically about what type of society do we want to have and how do we create the conditions, the structures, the laws, the policies, the processes to make that happen. And I think the part that I find really interesting, like there's a lot of really fascinating debates around policy, which I think are important. But there's, I think, another equally important part of the conversation is like, how do we actually do this? How do we scale this? How do we sustain this? And I think that's the part that is often forgotten. The excitement is in the political debates and that happen. But once you've decided what it is, the type of society you want to have, how do you actually do that? And that's sort of the role of the civics for me in civil service. The punk part is this recognition that um, I mean, I'm a big fan of Jennifer Polka's work. She has a book called Recoding America, which is, um, I think everybody should read it. It's a really good read. There is, if you don't get it, I've read the book, but I've also listened to an audiobook. So if you're more of an audiobook person,
Hmm.
check it out. There's Ezra Klein, the Ezra Klein Show. He interviewed her, and there's a good podcast with her on that. So it's even shorter summary. Um, but one of the things she talks about is how one of the challenges we have is that we've built these institutions. Sort of like government is a 19th century institution using 20th century tools to solve 21st century problems. So the punk part of this is this recognition that what we currently have isn't working, and we need to find better ways of doing that. We need to find better ways of doing government to bring government into the 21st century. And a lot of it is like machinery questions. How do we improve the processes for how government does stuff? And I think that's really exciting stuff. If you can improve something, if you can make it better, if you recognize that status quo isn't good enough and you can make it better, um, that I think is what better thing could you do with your life? I mean, when at the end of the day is looking back at your life, you're like, I made a difference. I helped make my community, my society better, and I did it in a way that lives on beyond me. That is what public service is all about. And I don't know, for me, there's that what could be more punk than that? This idea that you
Right.
are rebelling against what used to be, you're creating something new. Um, and yeah, there's a passion that comes with being punk as well. I think this love, it's not just a fighting against the status quo, but it's also a love of what you're doing, your work.
So I'm listening to you talk about this and sort of the real differences you can make. And the thing that strikes me too is I'm thinking back to a few of the people I used to work with. People who have weird and wild ideas, but they end up helping. One example is I used to work with this guy Dave in GIS, Geographic Information Systems. And in his local community, he was the guy who said, why don't we make all the tents that are there to provide supplies in an emergency one color? So
Hmm.
when we take the satellite photos, we can actually map them and tell people how to get there quicker. Really small thing, very cool innovation, probably saved lives. Now,
Absolutely.
you used to work with digital identities, you said, and I want to lay out an example or a conscious decision you made for sort of that societal value. What is a turning point, a key decision you had to make, something that you think digital identities should have or should do in order to be more meaningful to the public so the people who are listening to this can understand why things like this matter?
Yeah, I mean, the argument for digital identity in some ways is a very basic one, is like as our world becomes more digital, like the role of having some type of identity is to know who you are and what you have access to. Um, so, I mean, the most basic example in some ways, I'm from Canada, so the Canadian example, though I'm sure it's the same in the States, is like when you buy alcohol, there's a rule, you have to be a certain age. Well, to know if you're that age or not, you need some form of identity that shows that you are that age, that you have the
Right.
right to buy alcohol, not buy alcohol. Um, as we move into a digital world where more things are digital, that we still have that same requirement of being able to know, are you able to access this thing or not access this thing? By getting digital identity right, it empowers people to have access to services that they wouldn't have had access to otherwise. Digital allows us to go to more remote places. It allows us to do things at scale and more cheaply than we could do before. Um, I mean, one of the best arguments for digital identity is really like India has like they have this Aadhaar system, which is um, for those nerds in the space, you know about the Aadhaar system because it's sort of one of the examples you point to. And everything, it's not perfect by any means, but
Okay, but
by
we have a
giving
lot of nerds who are not in this space, so can you say what the Adhar system is?
it's just a name that they called the digital identity and digital credential system they set up in India.
Excellent.
And one of the key things with it is it was also associated with banking. So identity allows you to get access to a bank account. A bank account allows you to have a place that you can put money in safely and securely, not underneath your mattress. And getting this into rural communities allowed people to open businesses and be entrepreneurs and scale things in a way that they couldn't otherwise do. So, to fully leverage what digital technology can get us, digital credentials are really important for that. And digital identity is a piece of that. Um, and so why get involved in digital identity and why I try to make it a thing is because you're actually helping people get access to stuff they couldn't have access to before. Um, and the fun thing about it as well is it also if you do it right, it actually improves security and privacy. So one of the big concerns about digital identity is, Big Brother, government Big Brother.
Right.
But if you do like a good self-sovereign digital identity system, you actually improve people's privacy and security. And so to understand what that means, we can go back to the example I gave beforehand, which is if you go to buy alcohol, um, and you have to show your identity. Right now in Canada, at least, how most people do that is they show their driver's license. Well, your driver's license has a bunch of information on there that you give, but you don't actually need to give, right?
Right.
Uh, Beyond your name,
You only need the name and the age.
well, you don't even need the name and the age. All you need actually is this the person? Am I the
Right.
person?
Great point.
Me and this identity are matched. That's all I need. Name doesn't matter. It's just, is
Right.
this me? Am I that?
True.
Yes or no. And then the second one is, am I eligible to buy alcohol? That's all you need to know. You don't actually need to know my name. You just need to know, am I eligible or not? Do I meet the threshold or do I not? Right? So by moving it to a digital identity system, it actually allows us to do that. It allows us to um, be able to access things and give the absolute minimum amount of information, which is in some ways incredibly radical compared to where we are now, where it's
Right.
all about data and information, and we're just like giving out our whole entire life to these big tech companies and stuff like that.
Man.
And what we're trying to do with digital identity, almost like the opposite of that. It's like, no, no, no. We're going to try to get the exact minimum amount of information, the absolute least amount of information we need from you. And that's where this is all going. Anyways, so the point of all this, why is digital identity important, is because you are improving access for people to things in a way that is cheaper, more effective, and can meet them where they are. I mean, accessibility is another thing. Digital opens up all sorts of opportunities around accessibility that we didn't have before. And then of course the privacy and security piece. So there's all this potential with it that digital identity opens up to that has a real impact on real people's lives. Um, and it may seem like this like super technical stuff, but at the end of the day, you are helping real people's lives and communities. And that's for me what makes it exciting.
Yeah, no, I wanted to get it out so we could have a very solid example of what makes this punk. And listening to your example of using digital identity as a way of actually giving people the bare minimum of qualifying information. I'm going to
Yeah.
compare that to sort of private industry and businesses and companies. And I recently, one of the answers I give people about data security and what people know is I've read that there are so many information systems out there that people have stolen and gained access to the identifying information of the average US citizen between 3 and 4 times.
Yeah.
It is way out there. So my current best form of defense in the unpunk world of private industry is to be so boring that nobody wants to use my information. You know,
Yeah.
as opposed to civil service where people are actually trying to defend things.
Well, and I think, yeah, I mean, the thing I love about the civil service as well is that like it's all about incentives and motives. And look, the private sector is an important place to play in society, and I think government, when it's at its best, actually enables the private sector. There's some phenomenal work by a woman named Mariana Mazzucato, who I'm actually going to see in like 2 hours from now, 3 hours. She's doing an event I'm going
Excellent.
to here in London. She's amazing. Look her up. She got a TED talk about this. But one of her points is that government is actually one of the key enablers of private sector entrepreneurship and innovation because it creates safe sandboxes. It creates enabling conditions for the private sector to thrive. And those enabling conditions could be as simple as like laws and policies. You need to
Hmm.
have stable laws and policies that allow you to build a business. Um, but it can also be funding and all sorts of different things. And one of the things that she talks about is how governments are often the first ones to innovate. They usually try things first before there's a clear market for it. And then once a market starts to develop, the private sector sort of jumps in and scales it and brings it to the masses. And then the private government usually has to step in again because otherwise there's a natural centralization that happens within market forces that leads to monopolies that then also lead to negative outcomes. So then the government has to come in again and regulate.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just this role that you have as a public servant where your goal is focused on your community. Your goal is to make things better for your community. That is your central driver, not profit, not other things. And for me, there's a purity to that I just love.
So you've named a few people. We know that your future quest with Civic Punks is to just go find cool people doing cool things.
Yeah,
Are there
the
any
government
other
is cool.
Yes. Are there any other shout outs, people doing particularly interesting work that you want to give that we can? make sure we have named and linked and that people can read about?
I mean, honestly, we could be here all day. Like, there are so many people that I find really fascinating that inspire me, and I think everybody should know about. I have sort of my Mount Rushmore of nerdy public servants. Um, I mean, one of the ones I absolutely love is a woman named Pia Andrews, based out of Australia. I think she's one of the most forward-thinking public servants I've come across. Just read all of her stuff, and I recently interviewed her. I've got the Civic Punks, and underneath Civic Punks, it's a podcast and YouTube channel. I'm going to have a bunch of different sort of projects underneath it, but one of them that I'm excited about is a series where I'm interviewing some of the leading thinkers and practitioners in the world about their vision of the future of government. Where do they think we're going? And Pia was the first one I got to interview for that. So fantastic conversation. So she's one. So stay tuned for that. I need to edit it, but it'll be out soon. uh, Jeff Mulgan is I think one of the big titans of the space. He writes more than anyone else I know. He's currently got three books he's writing that'll be coming out soon. One on public sector innovation, one on the role of governments investing in social science. So think of DARPA and some of the other examples where government invests huge amounts of money into engineering and hard science. What does that look like for social science? Why aren't we doing that? And then the third one is how do you say it? The stupidity of groups. How groups and organizations can bring like the stupidity that can happen within those contexts, which is of course very relevant for government. But he's a brilliant mind out of the UK that I'm quite excited about. In the US, I mean, obviously Jennifer Polk is one I am a huge fan of. Beth Novak is another one that I follow religiously. I think she's doing fantastic stuff out of New York.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's so many. And it's not just those big names. I mean, in some ways, the real goal of this Odyssey that I'm hoping to go on next year is I mean, yes, engage with the big names, but also find the people who are on the ground who are doing really cool stuff. The people that you probably haven't heard about yet, um, that are doing really interesting stuff. And so I have a whole series called Something Cool where I interview people who are doing really cool projects on the ground. So there's a woman named Kate Phillip out of South Africa who's like they have a huge unemployment crisis, particularly amongst young people, at a scale that is beyond anything that we would imagine in Canada, United States, or the UK for that matter. And that's her job to figure that out. And the ideas and the things that she's trying are so outside the box. It is fascinating. So I interviewed her about that. And yeah, there's the thing that's amazing about government is that every single country has a government. Every country does. Even the most broken, fallen apart country has some form of government in place. And there's also different levels of government. And so there's so much experimentation happening all over the place. We think about governments like this bureaucratic, boring, what's the famous book and movie, um, it's Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide
To the galaxy?
to the Galaxy, right? When you think
Yeah.
about how government is portrayed there as this boring and gray and dull and
Yeah.
or in like Zootopia with the sloths and just everything really slow. And I mean, yes, there are parts of government that are that way, but there are so many really interesting experiments that are happening everywhere. And that's the goal of this Odyssey is to travel and to find them. And they're everywhere. There's stuff, really interesting stuff happening in the States right now.
Yeah.
Probably in your own, there's probably interesting stuff happening in your own community both you, Aaron, but also all the people who are listening to the podcast as well. Like, I bet you there are some really cool projects that you don't know about that are happening in your own community, within your own town, within your own city, within your own state. Um, and you have no idea because one of the things public servants don't do very much of is advertise.
No, they do
Talk about
not.
it. Right. And so that's
Yeah.
why they need people like you and I going out there and creating podcasts and YouTube channels and, TikToks and Instagrams about this stuff to show that, there's really cool stuff that's happening. And you should get involved. And yes, maybe you want to be an astronaut when you grow up, but also maybe you want to be a public servant because you can really make a difference in your community.
Excellent. I like that note. Let's close in on that note and move to what I call the one for fun. Derek,
Okay,
the
let's do
one
it.
for fun is something we do in every podcast episode for the CX Pod. It
I know
is
I'm a regular listener of yours, so I'm familiar with this. I'm
excellent, excellent.
familiar and ready.
So we know that you're working in Canada or about to start traveling around, and a lot of my listeners are American based,
Mhm.
and they know very little actual things about Canada. They know hockey, they know the people are nice, and
Yeah.
maybe they know Tim Hortons. What is something distinctly Canadian to you that more people should know?
Um, okay, well, I have to tell two very Canadian stories first, and then I'll
Excellent.
answer the question. So the fun thing, first off, Tim Hortons is such a Canadian story because Tim Horton was a famous defenseman for the Toronto Maple Leafs, so the best hockey team in Canada, as a Torontonian can say. So he was a professional hockey player who was very good, who then opened a coffee and donut shop, then became this global phenomenon. Well, not global, national phenomenon. There are Tim Hortons everywhere, and it's weird as a Canadian going to Tim Hortons in the UK and all of a sudden it hit me. I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like to be Chinese and then try to have Chinese food in, Canada or the States. Oh, right. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. You go to Tim
right.
Hortons in like the UK and you're like, no, you tried, but this is not quite right. But anyway, that's so Canadian. The other thing is maple syrup is something that we're really well known for. I know Virginia likes to think they have good maple syrup, but the best maple syrup is from Quebec. Um, and but a testament to this is I think it was passed recently, but one of the greatest heists in Canadian history is of maple syrup. There's the Great Maple Syrup Heist that happened where a
Really?
group of people stole millions of dollars of maple syrup from Quebec, which is sort of the heartland of maple syrup in Canada, and then sold it on the black market, which is in the east coast of Canada. And there's a really funny documentary, I think it was on Netflix about this. But it's such a Canadian thing that, of course, one of the biggest thefts in history is of maple syrup. I mean, they may as well have just been riding on moose to make it more Canadian. So that uh,
Yeah, yeah.
so that's sort of one thing. I think what is something that I wish people in the States knew about Canada? I mean, honestly, right now is an interesting time. Canada and US are in a bit of a conflicted state right now. I
To
don't know
put
how
it
many
mildly.
Americans, yeah, I don't know how many
Yeah.
Americans are aware of this, but in Canada, it is the story. You talk to any Canadian right now about it, and this is what they'll talk about. So I think within that context, part of it's just like we want to love each other. We're like I said, the way that Canadians often talk about Americans is like you're like our big brother, in a sense that we look up to you and admire you, as all little brothers look up to their big brothers. But at the same time, we try to define ourselves in rebellion to you as
Valid.
different and define ourselves in much of Canadian identity is a reaction to the States. We're not Americans, which is not necessarily the best way to ground your identity in something is not something else. Um, but with that comes a huge amount of admiration and respect and love. And I mean, that's something I think is important. I'm trying to think what else would be good to know for Americans about Canada, other than that we're still the best at hockey. Although that'll be interesting. The American hockey team on paper is the best. I will admit that.
A lot of things
And
happen on paper.
yeah, well, the still be at the Olympics coming up, but no, there are so many. I mean, I'm a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. The best, Austin Matthews is from the States, and he's amazing to watch. Um, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing I'd say is like
Excellent.
just come hang out with us. Come hang out
Yeah.
with us. Come visit. Forward 50 is a big digital government conference in Ottawa that's happening in a month's time. If there's any
Yes.
way you can make it, come hang out. I'll be there in person. You can see me in person. Definitely come check it out. If you can't make it this year, come next year. We've had a lot of amazing Americans come to Forward 50, including Jennifer Polka. Hillary Hartley was another one who came from the States. We've had so many amazing Americans come. So come hang out with us in Ottawa at Forward 50 in November.
So I'm going to leave this at the Ford 50. A good hangout with our Canadian brothers. And just the fact that there is a maple syrup black market delights my heart. From us
It
here at
is.
Ishmael Interactive, thank you for joining.